Today we launch our Distinguished Speaker Series, and it's a great pleasure to have you all here. Normally, we will be welcoming you into our design building in South Kensington in London, where we offer you drinks and nibbles, and we will have the opportunity to socialize. But of course, this is not possible today. So before I introduce our esteemed speaker, I would like to give you a quick sense of who we are at the Dyson School. The School of Design Engineering at Imperial is at the geographic center of what used to be called Albertopolis, in honor of Prince Albert, who developed all this area in London. The government funded this development with the proceeds from the Great Exhibition of 1851. And the vision was that this should be a center of innovation for the Industrial Revolution. Here is a representation of the Crystal Palace and samples of the many engineering wonders of 200 years ago. And I think this is an interesting metaphor here in design engineering, because design engineering was central to that first industrial revolution and is again central to what some call the fourth industrial revolution. By chance or by design, our building is surrounded by world-leading institutions in these areas, including the London Science Museum and the Victoria and Albert Museum. Across the road is the Victoria and Albert, the world's largest museum of applied and decorative arts and design. And we share a wall with the famous London Science Museum. And this is here the entrance to our school. The school is very, very new. We have been operating since 2014, and only recently we had our first cohort of design engineering graduates. We have a 4-year degree, the Master's in Design Engineering, and we have as well 2 double master programs, including Innovation Design Engineering and Global Innovation Design. And these 2 programs are run jointly with the Royal College of Art. One of the advantages of being in a new school at a world-leading university is that we get to build something new on the shoulders of giants, like some people say. And our vision is to be a leader on purpose-driven research. This means that having a positive impact really should come first. We focus this impact in 4 themes, which are of national and global importance: future mobility, health and aging, sustainable growth, and AI and data. Within AI, we have academics working on robotics, and they are part of Imperial's much larger robotics network that is one of the largest in the world. Here is Slider going for a little work. This is a project by Trish, Petar, and Nicholas lab. And we have a lab also on systems and algorithms that are working on privacy-preserving architectures for AI and Internet of Things systems. And one of the wonderful things about being in an interdisciplinary school is that we can pull together a mix of skills. For example, here with Hamed Haddadi and I are working on Internet of Things devices for supporting people with dementia and for their carers. I have admired Ben's work for many, many years. So it is really a special privilege for me to be able to welcome him to our school. And originally, I had discussed this event with him for him to come directly, physically to the school, but this is a wonderful opportunity as well. I don't need to say that Ben Schneiderman is one of the most recognized pioneers of human-computer interaction and design engineering. He is Emeritus Distinguished University Professor in the Department of Computer Science at the University of Maryland, and he's founding director of the Human-Computer Interaction Lab there. He's a fellow of the American Association for the Advancement of Science, the Association for Computing Machinery, the ACM, the Institute for Electrical and Electronic Engineering, the IEEE, and a member of the US National Academy of Engineering. His widely used contribution include things like the clickable, highlighted web link, the high-precision touchscreen keyboards for mobile devices, and photo tagging. So yes, every time tags you in a photo, you can think of Ben. His innovations in information visualization include dynamic query sliders for Spotify, development of tree maps for viewing hierarchical data, novel network visualizations for Node.SL, and event sequence analysis for electronic health records. Ben is also the lead author of the classic Designing the User Interface, and co-author of Reading Information Visualization and other books. His book, Leonardo's Laptop, by MIT Press, won the IEEE Award for Distinguished Literary Contribution. And more recently, a book that I really recommend, a recent book, The New ABCs of Research, Achieving Breakthrough Collaborations, describe how research can produce greater impact and how it can be interdisciplinary. Today, he will tell us about work he's doing on human-centered AI, and work that is to be published soon by Oxford University Press. Welcome, Ben.
Yeah, I'm very pleased to be here. I wish I were with you in London, but I'm in Vancouver, Canada, and pleased to arrive by virtual means, and glad to see this audience and opportunity to talk about the issue, the very important issue of human-centered AI. And as you mentioned kindly, my background comes from University of Maryland, but I'm spending time at the AI, and as you mentioned kindly, I'm hearing at the Peter Wall Institute at the University of British Columbia. So that's my connection these days. I'm always glad to wave the flag of the Human-Computer Interaction Lab at the University of Maryland, an interdisciplinary group that's been going on and now has its 8th director, Nicholas Alqvist. There's more than 1,000 technical reports and 200 projects on our website, and it's a fruitful partnership between computer science and the growing College of Information Studies, the iSchool. It also has partners in interdisciplinary groups around campus, including the wonderfully titled Maryland Institute for Technology and the Humanities, MITH. So I hope you'll visit or come to our annual symposium, online virtual this year, May 27th. It's will be open for virtual participation. Raphael kindly mentioned my book, Designing the User Interface, which is now in 6th edition and has grown to require 5 co-authors to tell the remarkable story of the growth of user interface and human-computer interaction, human-centered and user experience design, and the theories behind it, as well as the practical approaches to making it a success. Raphael's mentioned already the idea of the highlighted clickable link, that the light blue color, which we had tested in many versions in the 1985 period, became part of Tim Berners-Lee's 1989 manifesto for the web, and he rightfully called them links or hotspots. Also, the small touchscreen keyboard was something we developed. At the time, it was such a remarkable thing to be able to touch a small target with your finger that the reviewers questioned that we could accomplish this. Therefore, we made this video from which this image shows you how we did it with a crosshair above that you could move your finger around, and then lift your finger, lift off became the defining technology. Steve Jobs visited our lab. It became part of Apple's designs. I was a consultant for Apple for 5 years, and so I could see how these things transfer. The photo tagging idea also came from our work. I hold a patent on that, but it's been widely used in many, many different forms and dramatically improved on. But the bulk of my, so those are easy things to talk about, but the bulk of my work is about information visualization. The commercially successful Spotfire company, based on our work, formed a company in 1997 and grew to 200 people and was purchased in 2007, continues to be a successful product. The dynamic sliders are here, the double box sliders, the multiple coordinated windows would be all updated when you move the sliders, and they would be coordinated, and so that you could click in one area or select an area and see highlights in the other. The tree map idea was another one of those purpose-driven, as Raphael said, applications. Here is one for the stock market. It shows the large companies by the larger areas. Their market capitalization signifies the area. The color indicates whether it's been up or down over the last day, week, or month. This was taken just after the US election in November, a very positive move up. And you can see Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, Facebook, and Google are these large companies, but you can see some sectors were down, and you get a clear discriminating picture. And you can see even when there are up sectors, there are down stocks as well. Our NodeXL social network visualization tool does a great deal of Twitter analysis. It's the most widely used and taught tool for network analysis and visualization. And the second edition of our book appeared last year that describes how to use these tools. Event flow was our work about electronic medical records, which we spent more than 10 years on developing strategies to examine large numbers of patient records in aggregated form in ways that were never seen before. This example from Children's National Hospital in Washington, D.C. showed the process of intake for pediatric intensive care. And the first batch, about half of them, had the right sequence of operations. But there were 29 ways in which the teams failed on the other half of the admissions. And that was a great discovery for the hospital administrators, who changed their policies and training to make sure that they had a higher performance. And so it's one of those great points that visualization gives you answers to questions you didn't know you had, and gives you insight to processes that have been hidden before. But today, my topic builds on all of these ideas, and it extends to the notion of human-centered AI. The great success of AI, machine learning, deep learning technologies, is widely heralded and around the world has become the object of great attention. And I think its next step of growth will be to expand and to make it a human-centered AI. And by that, I mean some old ideas, first of all, the notions of amplifying, augmenting, empowering, and enhancing people. That's what's central to me for human-centered AI. We're not interested in technologies that do the work as much as technologies that enable people to carry out their work far more effectively than they ever did before. Technology has always done that. That's what the information networks, that's what the web, that's what email, that's what digital navigation, that's what digital photography have done for us. And that process will continue and expand with wonderful ways to make people 1,000 times more effective than they were in the past. Now, to set out on this path, I will lay out an overview of what I've been thinking about. And it starts with, and I hope Raphael, Calvo, and Dorian Peter are listening in, as many of you, to understand that what we really have to start with is not the technology, but the human values. What are the ways we're supporting human rights? Maybe as defined by the UN Declaration of Human Rights. What are the ways we're providing equal access to justice and equity across different groups, minority groups? And how are we supporting human dignity? That should be the driving question. Every engineering school should be teaching about the values, the ethics, and the rights of people. Now, turning this into something that we're going to build, the next step, I would say, is to understand the goals for individuals. And for me, the technology goals are self-efficacy, creativity, responsibility, and social connections. That's what people want. That's what they need. That's what's always driven the advances of technology. The design aspirations are the way we're going to make this happen, that we get closer to home of what we're going to build and design. So we want, and my focus will be reliable, safe, and trustworthy design. That's an important set of goals. I chose those 3 out of about 35 that have been mentioned, which I'll come to in a while, but this will give me a way of defining the attainment of these 3 design aspirations through the way we structure software engineering teams, the way organizations and companies will produce a culture of safety among the hundreds of teams they may have, the way an entire industry with hundreds of companies can coordinate the best practices and produce successful products and services, and the way government in wise forms of regulation and intervention can help that process in a positive way. Okay, that's the aspirations. But what I'm writing about these days is the focus on the user. And the stakeholders in this process are many. There's probably about 30 different ones, but I sort of put 5 down to represent the key categories I think of the researchers, the developers of products, those are the practitioners, the business leaders who manage them, the policymakers who shape that, and of course, the users who benefit from them. So that's the stakeholders. But at the same time, there are threats. And every process of technology development should involve a consideration of the positive and the negative potential impacts. The malicious actors, the adversaries, the criminals, the spammers, the terrorists, the oppressive political governments, we need to be aware of how they can use and misuse this technology. Those are the real dangers. The bias that comes from our unconscious awareness and our conscious activities. How do we prevent bias? Well, prevent's maybe too strong, but reduce bias as much as possible. How do we be aware of it? How do we make sure the data we use is unbiased, and how do we make sure we use it in an unbiased way? And then how do we make sure the software that we build is actually reliable, safe, and trustworthy? How do we make sure it has fewer bugs and that it does the right kinds of things? These are the real challenges. Now, my approach to facing these is threefold. First, I'm going to offer you in this talk the HCI framework for rethinking the design of technology. That is part 2 of my book. And the design metaphors, there are 4 pairs of them that we consider, and the notion of shifting or expanding to human-centered design will cause us to question the issues of intelligent or autonomous or social robots. And these are popular notions. They won't be easy to displace. I won't do this on my own. I'm going to need your help. It's going to take a whole community to make these changes. But that's what we have to do. We have to rethink. We have to give a better model about what design could be, how it can be super tools, active appliances, and devices that humans are in control of. And the third will be the governance structures that make this happen. The governance structures, again, are at the level of the team, the software engineering team, the organization that builds and runs these teams, the industries in which they're located, medicine, transportation, military, education, etc., and the ways in which government can productively involve. So that's the agenda for this talk. These 3 parts are where we're going today. So the first part is the HCI framework. How do we rethink the old models? Now, the old model comes from Tom Sheridan, the famed MIT professor, who in 1980 made a levels of automation model. And that was a 10-level model that went from full human control to full machine automation. That 10-level model was very compelling. It's very simple. It's very understandable. And in the first edition of my book in 1986, I supported that and wrote about balancing automation and human control. And the suggestion was that it's a zero-sum game. If you get more automation, you have less human control. And you have to choose somewhere along that line of what you're going to design for. How much human control and how much computer automation. That idea has remained firm in people's minds. It's a simple model, it's compelling, and it guides a great deal of design, including the current efforts about self-driving cars, where instead of a 10-level model, they have a 6-level model from no automation, manual control to full automation. And this is from the Society of Automotive Engineers. This is the active discussions. I participated in a panel last month about can we attain level 3? As if there is a way to move up from these levels and that's the only choice. I became increasingly uncomfortable with this idea, and I began and changed the title of the section of my book from balancing human and machine control to ensuring human control while increasing automation. Ensuring human control while increasing automation. A rather puzzling idea, even to me. I wasn't quite sure what I meant, but I came to understand that that was really more important, to understand how we can ensure human control while increasing automation. And it led me to clarify that and understand that actually it was not a one-dimensional model. There were really two independent dimensions. The levels of human control and the levels of automation were distinct. You could make two separate ones. And that was kind of the startling initiative that led me to think more deeply about how this HCAI framework would emerge. I wrote about this first in the International Journal of Human-Computer Interaction. This is free online. You can take a look at that. I've sent my slides, and I hope they're posted, or the link is posted to them from the YouTube and the Dyson School site. So what this looks like to me is a two-dimensional model. And here I start with some simple examples. We can look at the low automation and low human control examples. A music box, for example, a wind-up music box, or a landmine. They're not always happy ones. They're sometimes dangerous ones, but they're low levels of human control and low levels of automation. I thought about of high levels of human control, but low levels of human, high levels of computer automation and low levels of human control would be devices that we consider to be autonomous. A pacemaker embedded in your chest, which runs automatically. An airbag, which deploys in 200 milliseconds. It has to be automatic. Yes, there is a room, there's a place for us to build highly autonomous, highly computer-controlled devices with no human intervention. However, there's also a place where we want full human control and low computer automation. We want to be able to ride our own bicycles. We want to play the piano. We want to make the mistakes. We want to improve our mastery, increase our self-efficacy. We're responsible for it, and we can be creative. And we use these devices as a way of being in the world, expressing ourselves, communicating with others. Now, the place we're going to look at most is the notions where we have reliable, safe, and trustworthy designs. And you can think of elevators. They seem simple enough. You press the button, the light goes on, and it shows you the elevator's arriving. The doors open, you get inside, and you press the 6th floor. The elevator goes up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The doors open, and you exit. It feels like it's very simple, straightforward, and that you're in control of that environment. However, behind the scenes, there's a huge amount of automation going on. Many AI algorithms have been designed for elevator management, and they are complex automations. However, the things you care about, the things you see, seem to be under your control or are under your control. In fact, even when things go wrong, if the door is closing and someone steps in, a sensor will open the doors. There's protectiveness, there's safety, okay? So that's the kind of environment. The digital camera in your pocket is, to me an exceptional example of good balance of the design. There are many AI features built into your digital camera to set the aperture, the focus, to reduce jitter from your hand. At the same time, you have control over where you point at the zoom. You have many filters, many ways of selecting the kind of photo you're going to take, and you choose when to click. You also get a preview of what will happen when you click. That's essential, and that's a design principle we want to see happen more often. Predictive and prospective interfaces that give the user an understanding of what will happen when they select the automation features. So the digital camera is an exceptional blend of high levels of automation and high levels of human control. In fact, there are many ways in which human control happens before the photo is taken, many filters to choose from, modes of photography, lighting modes, and then afterwards you can again adjust it, and you can edit it and crop it and change the lighting and the contrast, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay? And it's also social. It's also social. It allows you to easily send those photos around to your friends. Okay? Now, looking at the border here, we see two of the dangers here. There can be excessive automation, and that's a danger we have to be aware of with any technology. We can go overboard. We can have too much automation in self-driving cars. In fact, the U.S. National Transportation Safety Board indicated that that was one of the problems in the famed Tesla crash of 2016 that killed the driver. And they chastised Tesla for two things: for creating a technology which would be out of the user's control, they wouldn't be aware, and secondly, for doing the things that because they could, not because they were right to do. And secondly, one of the important issues to me is they did not have adequate audit trails to be able to track down what went wrong. The confidence of the designers was so strong that they didn't include that. Now, this issue of excessive automation has come up in the crashes of the Boeing 737 MAX in the past 2 years. These two crashes resulted in 364 deaths, and it was traced not to an AI system, but a highly autonomous system. The belief that autonomous systems could be made perfect was embedded in the design of the Boeing 737 MAX, so that the control system took over, and when there was a faulty signal from the sensors on the outside of the aircraft, the MCAS system pointed the nose of the plane downwards. The pilots tried 20 times in the 12 minutes they had before it crashed to bring the plane back up, but they were not even aware, because the pilots were not even informed. And as IBM says on its website, invisible AI is unethical AI. So they didn't even know what was going on, and therefore could not take over adequate control. So that's how excessive automation can be dangerous. Now, excessive human control is also a problem, and we want to have that, and it's a well understood problem in human factors design and engineering, that you want to limit the dangers to people by putting in interlocks. And a simple familiar home one, that's in your oven. If you have a self-cleaning oven and the temperature goes above 500 degrees Fahrenheit, then the door cannot be opened, because opening it would be dangerous. And so those kind of interlocks prevent human errors from happening. And we need to think more and more about how to do that. So there are proposals for cars that would not start if your breath had too much level of alcohol in it, okay? Interlocks of that sort can be controversial and they can be problematic. You may want to have ways to circumvent them or for certain people to circumvent them, but we need to, in design, we need to think about the dangers of excessive human control and excessive automation. Okay, let's take a look and put this framework to work in a few situations. One is the pain control devices in hospitals. So the old-fashioned model was a morphine drip bag, no automation, not much human control. The morphine bag would drip into an intravenous line and deliver a steady flow of morphine. It could be good, it could be too much, it could be too little. There wasn't much control, there wasn't much automation. Computer controls led to an automatic dispenser that might dispense the morphine directly, maybe limit the total amounts and control the pace at which it happens. But that didn't always serve the user's need. And so the idea of patient-guided dispenser, that patient-controlled analgesia gave the patient a trigger to grasp, and when they clicked it, they would get more morphine. And they would be limited. There were interlocks to limit them taking too much morphine, which would be potentially deadly. There's a fourth model where we're moving towards is patient-guided, but clinician-monitored system, where a hospital control center might have hundreds of such devices that they monitor and therefore can see what's working, what's not working. And this provides a good balance between human control and machine control that gives aggregate data, that gives historical information over time, that can improve performance by using machine learning and data mining techniques. Let me take one more example. Where'd it go? Here we are, wheelchair design. The old-fashioned pushchair required a caretaker, a heavy wooden one with big wheels, required someone to push the wheelchair. And then we saw robotic devices that automatically move but don't give the user control, take away their self-efficacy. And the hand-powered and user-guided approaches have become the dominant form because it gives users control, it gives them exercise, a sense of movement, and it even leads to wheelchair basketball games and races. And the next generation are motorized, joystick-controlled, teleoperated, and programmable wheelchairs, which deliver information, for example, about the roughness of the streets that the wheelchairs move over, so that the city can gather the data about knowing which are the places that need the greatest amount of repair. So this two-dimensional model gives us a finer understanding than the one-dimensional model. Now, of course, some people have proposed three-dimensional models or even further extensions of this, but let me start with the two-dimensional model. So that's the first part of what my agenda is. The second part is the design metaphors. And I like this artist's work, which shows people at work using technology, and that's what I'm after. And the four pairs of metaphors derive from two of the central goals of artificial intelligence research. Those who work on AI science or AI and then AI engineering or innovation. The first are doing basic research, the second are seeking to make successful commercial products. So we see a lot of discussion of intelligent agents, computers as teammates, collaborators, and partners. We talk about autonomy, and the latest phrase is assured autonomy. And social robots are a large part and popular notion. However, I am critical of the notion of social robots. We have no success stories of social robots that have two legs and a face and arms and walk around. Those give way to better designs. Many of the social robot companies, Jibo, Anki, Cosmo, Kuri, have failed and have gone away. They don't succeed, okay? And so The alternate models are to think about super tools. That's what I propose. Tools are a modest notion. Super tools extend it, but they talk about enhancing human abilities. Teleoperated devices, supervised autonomy. We do want highly autonomous systems, but we want them to be supervised to ensure that there is human control and oversight, and we want active appliances. So let's take a look at a few of these things. I've mentioned already digital camera controls that allow you so many options and features to be able to choose and make the photos that you want to make. Similarly, we have a nice balance in navigation systems here from the White House to the University of Maryland. You can see there's 3 routes offered for a car ride or a bike ride, and takes 26 minutes this way and 25 minutes that way, and you can choose which way. So you're getting the benefits of AI, but you're getting a human-centered control that's predictive and prospective. Predictive and prospective. You get to choose before you set out which of these paths you're going to take, and you're given enough information about what the route is and the amount of time it will take. Similarly, the idea of texting auto-completion. If you start typing University of Maryland, you'll get these choices. You can choose which one. It doesn't do it for you. It lets you have the choice. It's predictive, it's prospective. And spelling correction, similarly, it will give you the option, and then you can select the option if you wish or not. The idea of active appliances is shown by these are sort of familiar appliances of a programmable coffee maker, rice cookers, blenders, dishwashers, clothing washers, drying machines. These seem modest, but there's a great deal of sensors and automation behind them that they make choices for how long it will run and whether it needs to be higher or lower temperatures. The cardiac pacemakers that we thought to be autonomous are shifting to be user-controlled, human-centered, through apps that let you control and collect the data and alter the parameters of your pacemaker. And similarly, the clinicians and the researchers get the data as well. So we're finding this new balance. Where we thought there was only one choice of pure autonomy, we're seeing there are more. The so-called autonomous Mars rovers that NASA operates are really quite teleoperated. Yes, there's local autonomy to avoid obstacles and precipices and navigate around locally, but there's a whole control room of NASA operators who are really controlling what's happening aboard the Mars rovers. Similarly, we hear a lot in the news about robotic surgery, as if the robot's doing the surgery. But the Da Vinci surgery company says on its website, robots don't perform surgery. Your surgeon performs surgery with Da Vinci by using instruments that he or she guides via a console. And these are wonderful advances in medicine because they allow surgeons to take precise movements in very difficult places to reach in the body and do unusual things like cauterizing vessels and intervening in very powerful ways that were not possible before. But it's a teleoperated device, and we want to ensure human control. The Bloomberg terminal is famous around the world. 300,000 users pay about $20,000 a year to have this on their desktop. There's a great deal of automation behind it, but there's a spatially stable, non-overlapped style of design that gives a huge amount of information for rapid decisions in complex situations and allows for exploration prospectively so that traders can understand risk analysis. Similarly, counterterrorism control centers, transportation control centers, police control centers, all of these provide huge amounts of information. I see the future of design as being highly visual and also collaborative, that people can work together conveniently to be able to coordinate their efforts. For me, the message is computers, humans in the group, computers in the loop. I made this bumper sticker in order to remind myself and others that that's the message, that people work in teams, but computers need to be in the loop. Okay, so let's get to the third part, which is governance structures. And here, my summary overview suggests there are 4 levels. We're going to look briefly at teamwork and the way software engineering practices can be improved to make reliable, safe, and trustworthy. This group, I give them the focus on reliability. The safety culture comes from organizational design, trustworthiness from certification by outside independent oversight efforts, and then government regulation where necessary. This was covered in the ACM's transaction on interactive intelligent systems just a few months ago, again, free online. So reliable systems has 5 parts to it. I've talked about audit trails, the workflows. I'm going to focus in this talk on just 2 of these, and I'll leave it to you to read the paper about some of the other approaches to dealing with it. Okay, so that's going to be our discussion of reliable systems. The safety culture has business management practices that are being applied. It requires leadership commitment, hiring the right people, spending more time and effort, a challenge to many companies, but increasingly, I believe this will be seen as the opportune way to go. It's just good business practice to make a safe product. And the third will be trustworthy certification. Many organizations are working internally to have internal review boards, but I think, and while that's valuable and important, I'm going to be a strong advocate of certification by independent oversight. I think there's a room for the big accounting firms to conduct external audits. The insurance companies, which have served us well in the building industries and transportation and medicine, might play a role as well here. Non-governmental and civil society organizations, plus professional organizations and research institutes are also playing a valuable role. And finally, government interventions. But I promised to talk about 2 of the reliability methods only in the remaining time here. The idea of audit trails and analysis tools are extremely, extremely important. It's one of the ways in which civil aviation has become so safe. The flight data recorders and the cockpit voice recorders that are analyzed when a crash has occurred has brought enormous benefits to making safe aviation. These retrospective analyses of failures are very powerful. That was the original intent. They've been used successfully that way. But there's 2 additional benefits that have emerged as this technology was refined over the past decades. The first is to understand the near misses. What did the pilots do to prevent a disaster? And understanding them better would help prevent the serious failures. So you want to use these audit trails to celebrate the successes as well as investigate the failures. The second unexpected benefit was by having the aggregate data from every aircraft flight, you could begin to understand how aircraft systems fail, especially as they age, and which features and which components are the most vulnerable. And so that analysis to do preventive maintenance has become an important feature. Now, part of the mechanisms are to understand the failures more openly and then and the near misses. So one of the things we need is the idea of incident reporting. And this is common in many fields, like there's medical, the pharmaceutical event recorders. In the US, the Food and Drug Administration receives thousands of reports from patients, from pharmacists, from clinicians about things that have gone wrong with patients taking certain medications. We need the same thing for AI-based systems, for human-centered AI. And that would be an important contribution. Sean Gregory, through the Partnership on AI, has developed the first of these that I know about, the AI incident reporting system. It's got already more than 1,000 reports about systems that have failed. That provides the evidence we need to make better systems. It provides the evidence that the insurance companies need to do risk assessment. It gives us the examples we need to train our students to avoid the kind of real failures that have occurred in the world. So flight data recorders for every robot, and we need incident reporters for every application, or let's say every major application. That's one of my big passions. To my dismay, many in the research community oppose these ideas, but the practitioner communities like the Robotics Industries Association are well behind them and support them. And I advocate strongly the idea of more strategies for audit trails and incident reporting. Okay, the second one is the lively topic of explainable user interfaces. And the current discussions about HCAI, explainable AI, revolve around retrospective explanations. The machine makes a decision about granting a mortgage, hiring an employee, or granting parole in a criminal system. And afterwards, you could get an explanation. It could be a local explanation related to this case or a global explanation about what the system does. There are hundreds, probably thousands of papers by now about retrospective explanation, often called post hoc explanation. And these will be useful, they're okay, but I don't see a strong future for them. It's just too difficult to do correctly and provide the kind of drill down that users want. However, there is a new strategy. It's to prevent the confusion and surprise that happens, and to do this by prospective, predictive interfaces, okay, that are interactive, visual, and exploratory. Let me show you what I mean. In this example, it's a very simple example about a mortgage request. So you might be asked on a bank system to enter the amounts, how much you want to borrow, what your household monthly income is, what your liquid assets are, and then you get a decision and it says, we're sorry, your mortgage loan was not approved. You might be approved if you reduce the mortgage amount requested, increase your household monthly income, or increase your liquid assets. That would be a pretty good example. There are a few more better ones, but I've had a great deal of difficulty of finding examples of post hoc explanations, user interfaces. If any of you listening has one, send it to me, please. My alternative would be a prospective user interface, or call it exploratory user interface, that lets the users select the amount with sliders to be able to adjust them. And as they move these, they will get more or less of this blue section here to try to reach the score needed for approval. They could increase, they could, if they reduce the amount of mortgage requested, they'll get more, they'll get closer. Or if they increase their household monthly income or increase their liquid assets, then they get closer to the score. This allows exploration of the boundaries of the model and therefore avoids the surprise and confusion and gives the user much more understanding of what's happening. This is common in a lot of systems, and I think it's a valuable approach, which has been implemented in a growing variety of systems. There are about 25 studies of research and practical systems that show how to do this. And one of my favorite is a wonderful system, a British system by a small team called Witchbook, to let you choose books to read. These are about novels. There are a set of sliders on the left, and you get to choose, select up to 4 sliders, and you can move them left or right. And as you move them, it changes what you get to see, okay? You can try this yourself. It's free and open. It's a charming group, and they deserve some donations, so please do that. Help them out. And you get to see what's happening, so there's not a surprise as to what what the results. You may be surprised by the interesting recommendations, but you do understand why you get them, okay? Don't need a post hoc explanation. Similarly, for selecting music, this interface lets you select acousticness, instrumentalness, danceability, valence, and energy. These are 5 of the attributes that Spotify classifies its music by. And as you move them, you get different choices, so you understand why you're getting them. And then even the OECD's Better Life Index has a set of sliders, and it shows you the different countries in the world. That kind of approach, I think, is really worthy of replication. Okay, so we've come to the end here. The summary is just to review and say, try to take a systematic approach to this complex issue that has many, many, many parts to it. There are, as I say, about 35 attributes that have been proposed, from trustworthiness and safety and reliability, robustness, agility, explainability, compliance to standards, et cetera, et cetera. There's 35 of those terms out there. And my way of approaching it is to think about the different stakeholders and the threats, and then my response and way forward is the HCI framework, the design metaphors, and the governance structures. My arguments, which are still, I need your help here because my arguments are still in a minority, but they drew the attention of John Markoff for writing in the New York Times last year about, my position, and that might be a useful way to get a gentle introduction to it. But I hope you'll take a look at the more substantive articles that are in the academic literature. All of these are free and open for readers. I've made sure of that. And most recently, an article in the National Academy of Sciences policy magazine called Issues in Science and Technology just appeared a few weeks ago, and it gives an overview of this in a 6-page commentary. I have all the resources and summary over here, as well as a link to the table of contents of the forthcoming book, but it'll take a while, but I hope it will provide interest. So thank you for your time and attention, and I'm glad to respond to questions. Thank you, Raphael, for the opportunity.
Oh, thank you, Ben, for your wonderful presentation. And I can see in the audience that there are lots of really good questions. Now, I will take the opportunity to start with my own, and then I will communicate the ones from the audience, okay? And the first one, I think it connects to the insight that you had about ensuring that human control can be done together while increasing automation. And I think this is connected, or the previous perception of this zero-sum game was connected to the perception that autonomy is something similar to independence. So I think your insights are related to the view that autonomy is not independence. We often accept or are guided by others or by systems from our own volition, right? We take advice from our parents, we take advice from our managers, our politicians, and sometimes we accept them willingly, and we feel autonomous when we do that. So I think that insight is very good. And my question was going to be, if you believe there is a more nuanced understanding of human autonomy nowadays, is this evolving within the design community?
Yes, I think so. I think you rightly point out that people are never fully autonomous. We're interdependent. We're happily interdependent. We want to be connected to others. We want the guidance, advice. We want people to tell us when we're going wrong. Okay? And the model of autonomy has its limits for humans, and we shouldn't be pursuing full autonomy. We should be pursuing responsibility, self-efficacy, okay, and facilitating interdependence. Now, when it comes to machines, remember, machines are not people. Okay? Machines are not people. Machines don't have responsibility. Okay? And therefore, they're not teammates or partners. They can't be. Okay? It's the wrong metaphor to suggest that computers are teammates or partners. And it's a danger to suggest that they're autonomous. They become 737 Max. Okay? Autonomy is deadly. And autonomy has been criticized for 40 years of the ironies, the paradoxes, the dangers. Many papers point out the dangers of excessive autonomy of computers. So if we have to look for the new model, it's that people are in control of the machines. The machines need to give us an understanding of what they're going to do before they do them. And we need to be able to operate and control or override. Yes, I know there are circumstances, some like, the airbag deployment, which has to happen in 200 milliseconds. But there we need exceptionally good design and care, and then monitoring its performance. And in the US in the early days, 2,500 lives approximately were saved each year by airbags. On the other hand, in the early days, 100 children and elders were killed by inadvertent deployments. And only then did the design refinements come, with a sensor in the passenger seat, for example, and the requirement that baby seats be put in the back seat. Many of these things changed because we had the data. But we need to move past the idea of full autonomy for machines and think about supervised autonomy, because only humans are responsible for what happens.
Thank you so much. I think the next question from Cesar Collazos in Colombia is somewhat related, or could be seen in a related fashion, and is the impact of culture on these decisions. I will be particularly interested in relation to autonomy, but I think it applies to your whole framework.
Yes. I mean, the different stakeholders represent different cultures also, and different stakeholders in different countries. Or even within a single country, there may be different communities. There may be high and low income, there may be old or young, there may be men and women, there may be other, a variety of special communities which each have their own culture. And the technology needs to be designed to be pliable enough that users can take control. So that's why I get angry at Facebook, whose controls on the news feed are so limited. We need to be able to expand the control set that people have. There's a current movement in Silicon Valley that says, no, control panels are not good. People don't use them. They're too hard. We need to make it autonomous. And we need to show that there's a better way, that well-designed control panels. I mean, the researcher, for example, Margaret Burnett, shows, and many others, that if you have these prospective user interfaces and give users control through well-designed control panels, they not only are happier, not only make better decisions, but they click more often on the results they get. So there's a virtuous feedback, there's a positive, there's a beneficial aspect. So yes, enabling people to adjust to their own local culture is important. Take a look just briefly what automobiles are like, how cars are adjusted. We have left side and right side cars, and we have many different controls on the seat position and the mirrors and the lighting and the sound and the heating. All those things enhance control. And there are cultural differences also between even the states in the US, and different countries have different requirements about what's needed for automobiles. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. So we have a question here from Don Brandley Bell, and it will be interesting to hear your thoughts about why social robots don't seem to be successful. Do you think this is something that will or should be achieved?
Yes, I have written, that's might be the longest section of the book. I mean, the long history of social robots fascinates me. It goes back to 1700s when Jacques Droz, the Swiss watchmaker, made 3 robots that played musical instruments, that wrote poems, drew sketches, and these become only the museum pieces of the next generation. And similarly, the attempts at social robots have constantly failed. I don't think people want social robots. They want tools. People want super tools. Oh, yes, it's playful and fun. It's educational. I like social robots. They're just sort of fun to look at. They become more like toys or maybe educational things. But I have a Roomba, okay? And maybe some of you have a Dyson vacuuming machine, that robot that goes around your house. It's not social, it doesn't look like a person, doesn't talk to you, but it gets the job done. And it's more or less under my control. That one, I think they could do better in giving better user control over it. That's a different story. But I just don't see a future. The researchers continue to try in spite of the repeated history of failures. I don't see that happening. There are some intermediate cases. The great success of Alexa and Siri show that voice user interfaces are possible. They don't fit the categorization of social robots that any of the field people make. The other success story possibly are the idea of pet robots for aged, older adults with dementia. There's some very interesting opportunities there, and studies of with robots with children on the autism spectrum. So there are some interesting ways those might happen, but I just don't see a future. If you have an example, please let me know. I'm really interested to see, but what I see is a long history of failure. And I encourage those who believe in social robot to study that history better and understand. And if you're going to build something, should at least understand why the past has not, led to successes. Yes.
Thank you, Ben. So I will take one more question because I'm very conscious of time. Here in London, it's already 6 o'clock, and some people want to go. But
Yes,
there's so many good questions there.
Yes.
Yeah, there's so many good questions. So Sibyl Riol is asking, do you think there is an ethical limit to human development, and what will it be?
An ethical limit. Well, this is a futuristic notion. I do believe in the importance of ethical thinking, but see myself as a designer. Ethics are important, but we should be focusing. It's a good foundation, but it needs to be complemented by design. And I hope the people working on ethical models and issues will attend more to the design side, because that's where the ethics becomes real. That's where we need to bridge the gap between ethics and practice. And that happens by clear thinking. Now, are there ethical limits? I don't want to speculate too far about how many hundreds of years. I do see a bright future for people taking control of their world, and of being creative people, about inventing new technologies, and of dealing with the problems of our time.
Thank you so much, Ben. It has been a wonderful presentation. There is a lot of grateful messages in the chat, the YouTube chat.
Please send it to me if you would.
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Thank you so much to all the audience for being here. I would like to take the opportunity also to invite you all to the next talks. We will have it once a month. The next one is by Mary Cherbinsky. Then we have Ross Picard, Don Norman, and Munmunde Choudhury. So these are the talks for the rest of the semester.
People, let me just say this is a wonderful effort, and we need to engage a large number of people. My position is still a minority one. I'm speaking up in the hopes of engaging with others. That's why I appreciate this invitation to speak to Imperial College London, and I hope others will follow this path, because it's really important for all of us to have a future that's human-centered. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, everyone. Good night.